Why don't we start in? Welcome. My name is Peter. For those of you that haven't met me. It's nice to get together on this incredibly beautiful summer day. Very unearthly weather. So what exactly is spirituality about? What is it? Well, there's a kind of a vague cloud that includes all sorts of different ideas and philosophies, and sort of like a snowball or a mud ball that's been rolling down a mountain, just gathering up pieces. Everything it comes into contact with something, it gets sucked into this big ball rolling down a hill. And so there's all this stuff, Well, spirituality means being compassionate, it means meditating, it means, recycling, it means, who knows what, right? It's just there's this kind of a free-floating, basically non-criticized, huge amalgamation of all of these ideas that are vaguely considered to be spiritual. But what is spirituality really? What was the Buddha doing? What was Jesus doing? What is Ramana Maharshi doing? What spirituality is, in its essence, is discovering what you are, discovering what this is. Now, there's all sorts of practices and associations that have been included along the way in terms that are held to be more or less useful in this enterprise of discovering what you are, discovering what this is. And of course, there's just endless lists of all the things that are held to be beneficial. But just because something is held to be beneficial in some tradition doesn't necessarily mean it's necessary or efficient. What I present could be called short path spirituality, which is basically spirituality shorn of all inessentials. An example of inessentials might be some of the traditions that religions have. You're supposed to wear certain kinds of clothes, or you're supposed to wear a hat on certain occasions, or you're supposed to this and that, all of which, may make sense within the cultural tradition of the religion, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with finding out what you are. Whether you eat fish on Friday, whether you wear a hat on your head or cover your face when you're indoors, or, all these various sorts of things that different traditions have held to be important. Well, here you are. What you are is right here. Right? What this is right here. So, what's the big deal? This is it. And actually, that's literally true. This is it. Here you are, this is it. This is the absolute fullness of what can be. In that far-off day when you're sitting on the peak of a Himalayan mountain and you find full enlightenment, what you're going to find is you here, which you can cut to the chase and find right now, you here. And of course, it's self-evident, right? You feel, yeah, I'm here, right? It's, if I said you're not here, it's an absurdity. It's like, be an idiot. I'm here. It's a given. It's unarguable. It's unassailable. It's a fact. It's a fact. It's real. It is. And being is powerful. Business is powerful. It's the only power. So it turns out that what you are and what this is, which is the point of spirituality, for me to recognize this, is very available. It's right here. It's completely addressable, completely engaged with. In fact, you've never been engaged with anything else other than your being and the reality of the being of reality itself. So, what's the problem? What's the fuss? Where's the kink in the system? Well, it turns out reality is very easy to find, very easy to recognize, but unreality is very hard to let go of. Basically, the way consciousness works, it has an amazing proclivity for imagination, an amazing tendency to spin hypotheses in imagination and to explore them with the possibility that they may be true. And consciousness also has the amazing proclivity to believe, to hold a hypothesis as being beyond the hypothesis, as being a fact. So an interpretation which essentially exists in imagination alone can be held to be objectively true. This is the basis for hypnosis, this is the basis for brainwashing, this is the basis for cultural conditioning, this is the basis for, we're all very familiar with this, it's the basis for, political gamesmanship, all, advertising, all this stuff, we're all very familiar with this. It's not particularly not obvious. But the challenge is for oneself that consciousness has a very difficult time recognizing its own programming, recognizing its own brainwashing, recognizing its own belief systems as being belief systems, as being held only in imagination and not as being objectively true. And so there's this vast gray area in consciousness between what is held to be the case, what is held to be real, and what is actually real. And consciousness smears this. Consciousness can effortlessly smear this to the point where what it holds to be real, it feels real. It feels like, no, this is the fact, this is the truth, this is how it is, And anyone that tells you otherwise, you think they're nuts. This is the basis for all fanaticism. This is the basis for, virtually all belief systems. I mean, the very word belief system is oriented to describe this phenomenon. But again, the challenge is that for one that is caught up within the sway of a belief system, typically it's transparent. You don't know it's there. You just think that's how things are. You think that's how the world is. That's what reality is. And it happens the nature of what this actually is flexible enough and fluid enough that these essential free associations can be projected upon the actuality of experience and can be seen to be true. So there's no contradiction. There's no, except of course there are contradictions that come up from time to time. The way we hold things to be tends not to pan out sooner or later. But fortunately, what is actual, what you are, what is actual here, is not a belief. It is not an interpretation. It is not a concept. This is not a concept. This is real. This is actually here. So what to do? How to approach all this? How to make some headway with all this? There's a lots of very inefficient ways to do it. You can take up meditation. Walk into some spiritual bookstore and there'll be dozens and dozens, hundreds probably of books on meditation. They each have their own different thing. One will say, get an image of a deity and sit it on your altar and stare at it for a half hour. One will say, light a candle. One will say, think of peace. One will say this. One will say that. One will say the other. One will say, try and still your thoughts. All these various things. And it's, of course, you can go and do all these things, and that's all very well and good. But is this going to penetrate, is this going to cut through the subtlety of your belief systems? Or, on the contrary, can these kinds of behaviors actually play into your belief systems by enabling you to think that you're doing something when all you're doing is doing something in terms of cutting through your erroneous belief structures, when all you're really doing is catering to them, pandering to them, supporting them. But we have an enormous advantage, we have an enormous asset, which is that you are real. You are beyond belief. You are beyond interpretation. You are beyond conceptualization. You are actual. And this is a profoundly powerful fact. And it's the profoundly powerful fact. And being with this actuality as it is, it reveals itself. Of course, again, the tendency of the mind is to slip off into your favorite, your pet belief systems, the flavor of the month belief system. And again, then the line can be blurred between what is actually the case and what is being projected in imagination and fantasy as being the case. But there is a there is a very clear way to distinguish between reality and interpretation. And that is this. Reality cannot be pinned down. You can't say what it is. You cannot pin it down. You can't say it's this or that. Anything that seems to be this or that, anything that seems to be interpretable, is a sure sign that it's an interpretation, i.e. exists only in imagination. So, scientists know this. You look at the physicists, they have these experiments and build these amazing machines and smash energies into each other, and they have no idea what's going on. It's beyond interpretation, but it's real. But then they come up with hypotheses of ways of explaining it, which is all fine, and as long as you know it's a hypothesis, you're not lost in a belief system, you're not lost in fanaticism, you're not lost in insanity. Another word for belief systems is insanity, by the way.
Is what?
Insanity. This is the normal human condition. So, what is experience? What is experience itself? Not, I'm experiencing a room, I'm experiencing looking at people sitting in chairs, not that. What is... Your experience is here. Experiential field is here. This is present. This is actual. What is it? What is this that's here? But you can't say what it is, can you? You can't say what it is. That's a sign that it is actual. It is real. It is not an interpretation. What am I? What is consciousness? Okay, consciousness. Well, it's self-evident that it is, working, doing whatever it does. It's being conscious. But you try and find consciousness. Try and pin it down. Try and nail it down. Exactly what is it? Where is it? How is it? And you can't get to the bottom of it. You can't nail it down. And this is not a failure to find it. This is a success at finding actuality, because actuality is uninterpretable. It is beyond being conclusively resolved as being this or that. Completely unresolvable. So anything that's resolvable, anything that gets down to being something, is a sure sign that it is fantasy. And it's fun. There's nothing wrong with fantasy. Fantasies are great fun and all that. But if you are unable to distinguish fantasy from reality, you're what's known in technical language as a crazy person. But again, it's not really a problem because you've got lots of company, because this is the normal human condition. So we're quite familiar. I mean, just go out on the street. Go out on the streets of Berkeley or Oakland and just watch the people around you. It's quite obvious that they're all nuts except you. And what do you think they're thinking when they see you? It's not a matter of stopping belief. It's not a matter of fighting belief. Belief is not evil. Fantasy is not evil. It's just a normal functioning of consciousness. It's a normal, it comes with the package. But it is nothing other than itself. It's not related to anything other than itself. A fantasy is simply a fantasy. Like a dream is a dream. Sight is sight. Thought is thought. Nothing is related to anything else. Everything is simply present. What is thought? What is thought? Well, you can't say, can you? It's actual, self-evident. It's not nothing. You can tell when thought is present, right? You can tell that there's thought, right? But you go looking for what that is. Well, it's like, what's thought made of? You're looking for it. Well, you can't find it. But it's not nothing. It's actual, but you can't resolve it. And this is the very nature of reality itself, of what this is, of what you are. And Buddhists call it emptiness, which is glorified into a great philosophy and all these, treatises written on all that. It just refers to the simple fact that nothing in actuality is resolvable. That's all. Things are fuzzy. You can't get to the bottom of what anything is, or how anything is. So, things like thought are pretty easy. You go looking for thought, and it's pretty clearly very fluid. It's pretty clearly relatively insubstantial. It's pretty clearly very unstable and unresolvable if you go looking for it. But then you take something like light, vision. As human beings, most humans, I think, are very centered and orienting on our field of vision. So what is light? What is vision? Here's your field of vision right here. So what is it exactly? What exactly is light? It has a lot of... It is exactly what it is, but what exactly is that? Can you find the core of it? Can you find the center of it? Can you find, the completeness of it? It's just an open actuality, an open actual presence that is as it is, but you can't really go much farther than that. And this is not because, we're stupid. You could get the greatest Nobel Prize winning physicists from throughout history, bring them into this room and ask them what is light. And to a person they'd tell you, we don't know. We can tell you a lot about how it responds in measurements and how it responds to, in experiments and so on, but we don't know what it is. Because it's real. So of course you can't know what it is. And it's never going to be known what it is. The scientific premise that science can actually, there's an ultimate knowledge that science is somehow tending towards, is going to be discovered to be completely unrealistic, because what this is cannot be precisely known. Scientists can and will, if civilization doesn't destroy itself, and all bets are off on that one. Smart money is not is not entering into that action. But if science keeps proceeding indefinitely, scientists will get more and more interesting, more and more precise theories that enable them to exploit more and more fine points and aspects of reality. Build better and better weapons, so on and so forth. But it's never going to get to an end, because there is no end. Endlessness. Well, that's weird, endlessness. Another word for endlessness is infinity. Infinity is an inherent nature of actuality. It's another way of saying unresolvability. You can't get to an end. You can't get to a barrier. You can't get to a boundary. And this boundarylessness is very easy to find. Try and find the edge of your field of vision. This is not abstract. It's extremely concrete. Here's your field of vision, right? It's right here. It's real. This is not like philosophy. This is just simply, real life. This is real. Your field of vision is real. It's actual. It's right here. Where's its edge? Well, it kind of goes to it and it kind of stops. Does it stop? Well, it doesn't really stop. It kind of peters out. What does that mean? When you start looking at the edge of your field of vision, it starts to get very weird. But you can never find the point where it stops being vision, even though it gets weird. There's no edge. There's no boundary. There's no top or bottom. Where's the back of your consciousness? Where's the back of your consciousness? How the space of your consciousness. Here it is. This is your consciousness right here, right? This is all this is showing up in it, right? Does it have boundaries? Does it have walls? Does it have a back? Does it have a bottom? Does it have a top? And again, these aren't abstract questions. This is very, this is very actual. It's right here, right now. Check it out. It's like this cup is right here, right now. This is not an abstraction. On the contrary, it's extremely concrete. Consciousness, such as it is, whatever that is, right? If it is anything, is right here, right now. So what is it? Where is it? How is it? Does it have boundaries? Does it have ends? Does it have edges? Does it have a top or bottom? What's it sitting in? What's holding it up? You can't say. And when you can't say, that's a sign. That's one of the possible indicators that it's actual, it's real. Because if you can't say, then you're spinning bullshit. maybe well-intentionedly, maybe not maliciously. Certain people that believe things are not necessarily malicious in their belief. People are very most altruism is belief systems, but it's basically fantasy. And so the question is, what is really here? What is real? What is this? What are you? What's going on here? And it turns out that is the sole spiritual question, the sole spiritual issue. And all this other, implications or inclusions and so on and so forth that have showed up culturally and in various traditions that are generally included in spirituality are basically complete irrelevancies in the face of this one issue. What is this? Ramana Maharshi put it, who are you? But who, what, where? It's the same question, right? And it, it's, so a lot of people turn that into a practice and say, who am I? Who am I? No, you're right here. What is it that is right here? You don't need to sit and trance out about it. Just fucking look and see. What is it that is here? And here it is. And that's the Totality is spirituality. The essence of this yoga, what I call this yoga, the yoga of radiant presence, is the development, or more accurately, the realization of sensitivity to subtle energy, sensitivity to what is called psychic phenomena, sensitivity to nuances, let's call them experiential nuances that are not normally classified within the normal human, framework of qualifying what's going on here. It turns out that what this is consists of a vast, literally infinite sea of, call it energetic phenomena, subtle qualities. And we experience these qualities, let's call them the lower frequency or the denser aspect of these qualities, as what is phenomena we think of as physical. So we see bodies, we see the environment, we hear physical sounds, and so on and so forth. But if one becomes aware, if one becomes sensitive to one's experience carefully, one will notice a vast range of actual qualities, experiential flavors or qualities or what have you, we don't have language for this, that do not correlate to specific physical phenomena. And ordinarily, within a normal human framework, these are written off as noise, noise in the system, or fuzz, or just, whatever. But in actual fact, it's not like that. The whole point of the so-called meditation we do every morning is, as you may have noticed, is an exercise in letting yourself notice and letting yourself perceive, letting yourself, settle into a range of experiential sensitivity and acknowledgement to these more subtle aspects of experience, which are real, of course, they're actual. And it turns out they're very far from just being noise, they're very far from just being irrelevant garbage in the system. It turns out that they are profoundly interesting and even important in terms of the overall perspective of what this event that we call reality actually is. In normal, materialistic human philosophy, these are just written off. They're just, beyond the pale. They're just, discarded as completely irrelevant noise within the system. Within all esoteric traditions throughout history, however, these things are addressed. In the yogic tradition, these are called lokas, or tattvas of subtle energy. In Western occultism, these are called astral light or subtle inner planes, and all, so on and so forth. And all various traditions of human spirituality address very specifically these phenomena as they are. And in practical terms, in terms of coming to fully embody what you actually are, what's going on here, the process is explicitly one of becoming sensitive to and participating consciously with these more subtle aspects of experience, of reality. And the kind of sensitivity training we do in the meditation is intended to facilitate that. You're sitting there basically doing nothing in a relatively low stimulation environment with no explicit sort of human functionality and normalcy. You're just sitting there for an hour. It's like, okay, now what? Well, now we sit. Then what? Well, then we sit. And yet, in the midst of that, there's all of this amazing, sea of qualities that show up in experience. And of course, we're all familiar with this, and we always know, we've always experienced this stuff, but again, we're typically, programmed or conditioned to not particularly acknowledge all this stuff, to kind of ignore it or write it off, or, And so this is exactly the opposite of that. This is explicitly letting yourself be with this as it is, letting it show you what it is. Because this level of phenomena is not describable in words accurately. No level of phenomena is describable in words accurately, but this level is very much not describable in words accurately. The only way to be with it clearly is to be with it as it is. So you have to let it show you what it is. And fortunately, we all already are perceiving all this stuff, even if we're used to completely ignoring it as relevant. And so the point is to allow the possibility that it may be relevant, it may be actual, and then by just simply being with it, develop familiarity with it, and during the course of which you will discover what it is and what your functionality on those subtle levels is, and you'll be able to participate with it very much in the same way as you participate with phenomena on the let's call it the more coarse, the more low frequency levels of the physical, so-called physical actuality. So, what I call radiant presence is this full bandwidth of energy. It actually literally constitutes reality. It constitutes matter, but it also constitutes these subtler aspects of actuality. And the nature of what this phenomena is, this energy is, this radiant presence is, this subtle energy is, reveals the true context of what you are, what the world is, and what life is. Participating, or we could say dancing or dreaming in this infinite field of what shows up to us as experiential flavors and qualities. And most of the more subtle aspects of this behave and their nature is radically different and other than the kinds of energies that we're very familiar with showing up in the way that energies we're more used to qualifying as physical behave. There's a learning curve, a relaxing into being with very, very phenomena that are very, very strange, apparently, from the perspective of normal expectation of sort of physical orientation or physical functioning, let's say. So it's rather like becoming accustomed to functioning effectively in a dream as a dream instead of pretending it's with the waking world, or functioning effectively in deep sleep rather than just assuming it's nothing whatsoever, and so on and so forth. Because all of these experiential realms that we're all completely familiar with, deep sleep, dreaming, etc., all are aspects of this same phenomena, this sea of energies, call it, that constitute all of the subtle and grosser aspects of your experience. This spectrum is essentially a continuum, but it appears very different on different, call it, levels of grossness or levels of bandwidth, levels of frequency. And again, all this is very euphemistic because there's no way to precisely delineate this stuff. But it is as it is. It is actual. It is objectively real. And the trick is to let yourself be with it as it is, and you learn what it is through participation. The same way you learn what this world is as a toddler by, you learn how to walk by falling down a lot, and then eventually you learn how to walk. You just through prolonged familiarity, you sort of learn the ropes. And this is exactly analogous. The way this works is you already have a profound experience of these levels because everyone is already participating on these levels. But typically we're not conscious of it. Typically we don't orient to these things or acknowledge them as actualities. So it's rather analogous to the condition of a sleepwalker, maybe sort of bumbling around, not functioning particularly effectively or meaningfully. And so this process, so to speak, is essentially letting yourself wake up within these subtler, more seemingly amorphous realms of experience, and learning to participate in these realms, such as it is, such as participation is. So that's what the meditation's about. Calling it a meditation cloaks it in a pseudo-Eastern, justification. But in actuality, what it is sensitivity training to psychic phenomena. It's sensitivity training to subtle energy presence, which is the whole essence of this yoga. This is what this yoga is all about. Radiant presence is a very specific euphemism for this bandwidth of energy that constitutes experience. It constitutes gross physical experience, and it constitutes subtler experience, and it constitutes the absolutely subtlest experience. And as I said, part of the confusing aspect of experience and reality itself, and also of this process, is that the way this phenomena on this spectrum, in this continuum, in these bandwidths look and seem to function appear drastically different at different levels. So the way things work in one level is completely different than the way things work on another level, which is completely different than the way things work on another level, and so on and so forth. So it's all very strange and disorienting. So you sort of think that things are a certain way, and then you tune into another level of your experience so far, and all of a sudden, woo! It's like, wow! You have to relearn how to walk, so to speak. You have to relearn how to think, so to speak. And so this can be very strange and disorienting. And we're all familiar with this because it's strange and disorienting to be a human being, isn't it? And the reason it's strange and disorienting is because we are in the midst of this vast field, this vast spectrum or continuum of bandwidths of energy phenomena simultaneously, and they're bewildering. They're confusing as hell because they're so divergent and so strange and so nonlinear. And so this is really about sensitizing yourself and developing familiarity with this as it actually is. By being with your experience without holding it to be any particular way, and just gently let yourself feel what it is. And in the process of feeling what it is, since you are intelligent and it is intelligent, there's a sort of a spontaneous learning that occurs, where you learn the ropes, so to speak. You learn how to interact and participate within, let's call it, the dimensions of these various bandwidths, and so on and so forth. So now the cat's out of the bag. You are in a wacko cult.
Finally.
Finally, right. The Kool-Aid is being served in the back corner.
Electric Kool-Aid? Yeah, that's okay.
It seems to me that attending in this way, it's becoming more and more sensitive, actually, is sort of an underhanded way of coming upon, or backdoor way of coming upon the illusion of duality or the realization of oneness.
Yeah.
That it happens almost like while you're looking the other way, as opposed to doing, who am I?
Yeah.
It's kind of, heavy-handed.
Sure.
Oneness type supposed ways of getting to oneness.
Yeah.
So that's
absolutely.
So the sensitivity actually just takes you there.
Yes, it does. And the reason for that is the nature of this continuum of, let's call it subtle energy. The nature of this continuum is such that when you get near the higher frequencies, or let's call it near the top, as opposed to the bottom, which let's call it material realm, and all this language is very euphemistic and absurd, but as you get sort of higher in bandwidth and higher in frequency, there is less and less of a difference between this and that, between subject and object. There is infinite range of difference, but the difference is a difference of inclusiveness, rather than a difference of extreme polarization, which seems to be more apparent on the sort of the grosser aspects. And it's all very, it's not simple at all. It's not simple because all of these levels coexist and interpenetrate each other. So even your sensory material experience of the world partakes of these same aspects of non-separation because the higher frequencies are here too. It's not literally true that these strata or different bandwidths of frequency are actually separated from each other. They're all this right here. So they're all sort of smushed down, and yet they behave very contradictorily and very different. But in the higher frequencies, it's all one. It's literally all one. It's a symphony. All the myths of, God's in the throne, and there's a sea of light, and the angels are all dancing around in a circle of perfect harmony. That's a mythic depiction of this condition of absolutely unified, harmonized energy that depicts a full spectrum and yet is absolutely inclusive, which is what we call it the higher frequencies are. And you are there, you are that. As you are also on every other level where things can seem to be more and more grossly divergent, more and more heavy-handedly different and contradictory.
Yeah, it seems like, the experiences I have that seem, if I were to, where the field becomes alive. I mean, it's just the whole power is the alive is the word for. I mean, it's not alive is completely felt. Yeah. So I mean, it's
because the nature of this energy is pure life force. It is pure consciousness. It is pure intelligence, literally. So, naturally, as sensitivity spontaneously develops, this is palpably felt. It's intuitively seen to be the case. And again, it's confusing as hell because from some points of view, it seems to not be the case, and from other points of view, it's obviously the case, and the fact that those points of view seem to be contradictory is confusing. But here we are. So that's what you got to work with, so. Yeah.
Peter, when I think about developing sensitivity, there's a lot of various, spiritual practices that involve like cleansing and all that stuff, and you work on the vessel, and it just, in a less drastic sense, it would make sense to me that you'd be more apt to be able to perceive this if you're well rested, if you didn't smoke a cigarette before walking in and sitting, if you weren't drunk, all that.
Right.
Like, is there an aspect to that would help or hinder?
Well,
if you're in good health or bad health?
There are many people there are many people in traditions that try and approach it that way, but in actuality, conditions that we would describe as ill health or dysfunctional, intoxication, all these kinds of things, are actually phenomena of this very same energy field. So, in actual fact, if you look at them, you find the same thing. So it turns out that that's not actually necessarily the case. On the other hand, everyone is a unique energy system. Everyone is essentially a law unto themselves in a very heavy-handed way. I mean, people are radically different from each other. The sort of assumption that, well, we're all kind of basically the same is true in a sense, but it's also completely false. People are completely different, You are unique in how you work and what you are in the way, with your strengths and weaknesses and so on. And that applies to the fullness of your entire universe, so to speak. And so, it obviously is expedient to take advantage of the ways you work. And if you observe in yourself, for example, that certain modes of behavior or whatever, right, are conducive to sensitivity, then by all means take advantage of that. But what's one man's meat, another man's poison. Another person might find intoxication is in fact an advantage. There's all sorts of traditions and shamanic traditions of, witches and so on, shamans taking all of these amazing psychedelic drugs, and of course, many of us come in from the generation where psychedelic experience is part of our normalcy. And certainly these things can be illuminating profoundly, or not. And again, you have to, basically it's a question of the buck stops there. You're the authority on what works for you, and no one can tell you what to do. So there's all, authoritatively. So basically you have to You have a lot of options, and you have to intelligently choose for yourself what is most effective and what's most efficient and what works. And again, you learn that by doing. Right? But it's all about sensitivity. It's all about, and there's no limit to how sensitive you can become, because you are that. It's not a matter of developing something you haven't. It's not like there's these fabulous subtle heaven realms somewhere, and you have to grow wings to fly there. So it's not like that. It's just that experience is much, much more subtle than most of us are used to noticing and appreciating. But it already is the case. It already is like that. So it's a matter really of just noticing, not being afraid of weirdness, not being afraid of tenuousness, not being afraid of amorphousness. Developing an ease or a comfort with just real subtle flavors. Like in the meditation this morning. It's if you just feel what experience feels like, you begin to notice it's just all of these amazing, this incredible dance of subtle qualities. And you can't define it or put words on it. I mean, because again, it looks so different and different aspects, and the very nature of consciousness or awareness is it's sort of dancing around, and it's like someone with their hands on a radio dial randomly tuning the dial, right? I mean, this is the nature of experience. And so it's all very intrinsically unstable and disoriented to begin with. And so that's the way you have to approach it. You have to let it be that, and just be with that as it is, and feel it. And over time, you develop a kind of you just get familiar. You get familiar with it, and with familiarity comes intelligent engagement. Yeah.
So it's interesting that you started off with kind of with the sound environment and kind of hearing things, because I have this bell-like whatever. I have this noise, and I never noticed it before I started meditating. And of course, as a doctor, the first thing I thought was that I had tinnitus, and then and then it's like, is it affecting my hearing? And I'm not quite sure. But so at the beginning of the exploration this morning, I just kind of was exploring it. Does it affect my hearing? I'm hearing all kinds of other things. I had a little trouble hearing your voice, so I moved closer. But then there's so then I started noticing, well, there's the sounds that I'm hearing, I can hear subtle sounds like the heater going on and stuff like that.
Sure, of course.
Right? And probably I have some hearing loss. I did a lot of rock concerts when I was young.
Former rock drummer here, okay?
Right.
What?
Yeah, what?
What?
But so I was noticing, there's something that I remember hearing you talk about the first time I met with you, and I had heard it a few times before, is that everything is within experience and nothing can be outside of experience.
Yes.
And I got so I noticed I started daydreaming about or planning something, and then going into reveries about something, or recounting a conversation. I was, oh no, I'm not supposed to do that. And then all of a sudden I got it. It's like, if that's what's arising in my experience, it's what's happening. It's not outside. It's not let go of the good or bad, what, it's just that's what's arising for
me. Whatever appears is an aspect of the bandwidth of the energy.
Right.
There's nothing that's not there. If there's a ringing in your ears, if it's there, what's it made of? It's made of this energy within this spectrum of continuum. And the trick is to let yourself be with things on simultaneous levels of subtlety. So there may be ringing, or there may be heavy-handed thoughts, or there may be itching on your leg, or whatever that's there. But also there'll be this, vibes, whatever. Right? We don't have language for this. And the trick is, that's there. If it's there, feel it.
Right.
I mean, the rule is very simple. If it's there, feel it. And what's there, as you let yourself feel it, you'll just notice more and 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 more forever. I mean, it's literally infinite.
Right.
And by letting yourself feel it, you develop sensitivity to subtler aspects than we're used to noticing, than we're used to paying attention to, that we're used to acknowledging even exist. And there's just the subtlest hints of vibes and flavors.
Right.
And after a while, you feel it, and you're there. Since you feel it, that means you're there. How you couldn't feel it if you weren't there too. And the you that's there is very different than the you that's, say, here more overtly in the waking world, and so on and so forth. And so this is the point, is to sort of, consciously inhabit who you are on all of these different levels. In various traditions they call that, waking up in your subtle bodies or something. There's all sorts of elaborate metaphysical traditions about, trying to describe these phenomena. But it's much simpler than that. It's simply a matter of being with your experience as it is and letting yourself be really, really sensitive to its nuances. And when you find that the most subtle range of your experience you can find, and you just get real comfortable with being able to just go there, like, wow, yeah. Then you'll find another subtler level because your sensitivity increases. And then you can go there, and then you'll find a subtler level, and you'll go there. And what you look like, what the world looks like, what the realm of experience looks like on each of these levels is quite different than it looks on other levels. And so it's a discovery of that, wow, I live in a whole other different universe than I thought I did. And wow, I live in a whole different universe than that. And wow, I live in a whole different universe than that. But without making it up or fantasizing it, just let it show you what it is.
And so the other thing that I've been noticing a lot is like my body disappearing, and yet then I'll like some part of my body will call attention to like you need to shift your thing or like, and then I can go really into that, and
absolutely.
I can go into levels of that, and then my body will disappear again, and it's kind of for me that's kind of new, probably not new.
Right, but you're noticing it.
Yeah.
And again, because your embodiment on these different frequencies is drastically different.
Right.
On most of these levels, you don't have anything like a physical body.
Right.
And again, the attention, the awareness dances around between these levels like someone randomly manipulating a radio dial to one station to another. So, you'll be sort of heavy-handedly in your body, and then you'll be, in some little subtle thing, and then you'll be in a thought, and then and if you just sit with your experience and feel it, you'll feel this shooting around through all these amazing realms of subtlety and grossness. And you look at, and again, it's all very subtle and confusing because it all interpenetrates.
Right.
The coarser levels are not separate from the subtler level. So you can look at a coarser level phenomena, and all of a sudden you're in a subtler level phenomena, and your body's gone.
Right.
Or whatever.
Or sensing people's energy around you.
Absolutely,
like
all that.
them without touching their body.
Yeah, I'm sure you all could feel that. Sitting in meditation with the group of you, it's literally like being in a symphony. I felt like a conductor of a symphony because I'm just feeling all these notes and flavors, and every now and then it's like, and everyone sort of hits a note together, and then it drifts apart, and just feeling this dynamism.
Right.
You can feel that, eh?
Yeah.
This stuff is for real, and it's not a matter of making sense of it. It's not a matter of getting a handle on it. Just feel it, and in feeling, it's so easy. In feeling it, it shows you what it is. In feeling it, it wakes you up to your being on these levels. It's automatic. It does itself. It's completely effortless and easy and fun. So just send $1,000 to the number in the bottom of your screen. Operators are standing by. It's fun. It's easy. Yeah.
I'm chuckling to myself because your intro, had I heard that 3 years ago when I met you, I would have been so out of the door that because around 40-some years ago, I unfortunately at that time I went to the Berkeley Psychic Institute a few times.
No, I know them, yeah.
And I opened up, and that just wreaked total havoc because it was through my ego and my codependence.
Yeah, that guy that ran that place was a real jerk.
Whoa.
You'll forgive me for saying my opinion.
Well, I don't remember anything except the nightmare of seeing all this shit and not knowing what to do, and I shut down. For
of course.
years.
No, this stuff is what this is disorienting as hell. It's weird as hell. People that are locked in mental institutions are there because they're with this stuff on all these different levels and they can't pull it together.
Right. But yeah. And I have a feeling that could have happened to me at that time.
Sure.
And I went, first of all, you're never going back there, and not only that, you can cut this out. You can do this. And it's okay. But anyway, but when you say and this is you, and this is you. There is something, and I'm sort of pigging up back on what Stan said. There's something that is so phenomenal about just leaning into God perceiving God, or intelligence perceiving intelligence. That is so unscary at the time leading us. That I'm very, very grateful. And I'm very grateful. This is my third retreat, and I had not heard those words before.
You never heard any of the same words before. It always is different.
Thank God, because psychic and all this other mumbo jumbo is like, oh, not me. Yeah, really. Really.
Yeah. No, all the most profound, unbelievably mind-blowing truths of religion are literally true. And they're not literally true in some grandiose way involving, cathedrals in Rome and weirdness. It just happens to be the case. And it's the case right here, right now, in your experience, and it's there to be noticed, it's there to be appreciated. And all these aspects of it are available, you just need to see them. It's like, it's all there outside the window, you just need to look, kind of thing. And so it's really just a matter of relaxing and just, becoming acclimated, thank you. Becoming acclimated to the way this is. And as you become comfortable with it, then you sort of relax, and as you relax, you let yourself include more and more of it, and it becomes non-threatening, and the fact that of its weirdness becomes non-threatening, and it's not even weird anymore, it's just what it is. And it's like going to sleep at night. Going to sleep at night is a really, really weird thing, but typically we shut down, our rational minds are shut down before we're bombarded with how weird it is, so we're not scared shitless of going to sleep. Some people are terrified of going to sleep, and those are people whose conscious minds don't shut down early enough to censor how weird that realm of experience is. But it's all there, and so really it's just a matter of relaxing, gently feeling your way into it at your own speed. It shows you what it is, and you discover all these mind-blowing facts of what's going on here. I mean, that have been put down in all of these incredible, inconceivably glorious and it couldn't be like that, sutras and profound statements of all the religions. And they're all just actually matter of fact, same old, that's what this is. And it's just there to be seen. And it's the only thing about it is, well, if you're interested in looking, look, seek and you will find, as has been said. So just be comfortable, relax. And feel what is here. Feel what's here. What is it that's here? What is this? It's right here. What is it? It's always here, isn't it? What is it that's here? It's actual, right? You can feel it. Can't possibly be described. Can't possibly be figured out. But here it is. It's real. It's actual. You can feel it. You can look at it and check it out. The field of vision is here, isn't it? What's it feel like? What does vision feel like? What texture does it have? Just feel your field of vision and feel what it feels like. What is it? How is it here? Are you having to do it? Are you having to put it here? Is there any work involved? Any effort? Or does it just show up? It's just here very strangely. Field of sensation is here, right? You feel your body, you feel your skin tingling, right? You feel your chair on the chair against your butt. Feel your clothes, feel whatever it is it seems to be feeling. What is that that's really here? We have all these words for what it is. What is it? What's it feel like? Just feeling the sensation. What does it feel like? What is it that's here? What is sensation? What is it? It's real, it's actual. What is it? Sound is here. Sound is in your field of experience. What is sound? Such a range. Just feeling sound. What is it? All this that's here, all of this presence. This is present. No, it's present. It's actually present. What is it that's present? How is it present? What does presence mean? What is this presence? What is it that's present? Just feeling it. What is it? What does presence feel like? Plenty of chairs if you want to move around. If you're happy over there,
There's
that's
empty
fine.
chairs.
No, just look at that.
Move
So just feel your experience. Feel what is here. Feel what is present. What is it that's here? Don't meditate, don't try and be special, don't try to go into some kind of a trance. Just feel what's here. It's always here. It's completely normal, completely same as it always is. What is it? What is it that's here? You can feel it, can't you? You can feel this actuality, this presence. You can't say what it is, you can't even find it, right? But it never goes away, it's just right here, everywhere. Where is here? This is here, but where is that? Where is here? What is here in? What's here made of? What is this presence, this actuality made of? What is sound made of? What is light made of? What is thought made of? Just feel it. Feel thought. What is it? What is thought? Feel it. It's very strange. It has a very amazing texture. Where is it? Where is thought? It's right here. But where's that? Notice how this just does itself. It keeps doing itself. It never stops. It never lets up. Completely effortless, completely easy, completely spontaneous. But it's completely alive. It always puts all of this content present. All of this light is always shining. All this sound is always here. All this sensation always tingling. All this thought always wafting through. All this energy and all the areas of experience just spontaneously here, effortlessly, from nowhere. Just here. Actual. Completely real. Completely present. What is it? What is it that's here? Just feel it. What is it that's here? Don't classify it. Don't name it. Naming it doesn't say what it is. It just puts sounds on it. What is it that's here? It's so inconceivably detailed, so inconceivably intelligent, so inconceivably meaningful. But makes no sense. Can't say what it is. And it's completely normal. It's like always here. Never goes away. Always looks different. Always presents different information. But it's always exactly the same. Right? Never comes, never goes. Just you here, like always. What is you here? What is that? Feel it. What is you here? What is that you feel? What is it? It's so subtle. So obvious. Completely alive, completely vibrant, completely tingling. Every portion of it. Without limit, without boundaries, without walls, without edges. Just feel it. Feel what's here. Feel the actuality of it, the normalcy of it. It's real. It's completely real, just like always. This is what reality is. This is what you are. What is it? Just feel this presence. Nothing happens by itself. All the patterns of light you see just show up. How does that happen? All the sounds just show up. How does that happen? All the thought just shows up. How does that happen? Just feel what experience feels like. Feel what is here, feel what is present, feel what is actual. It's you. You were here, just like always. What is it? Feel what it is. You can't ever say what it is, but you can feel it. It's real. It's completely obvious. It's astounding. It's inconceivable. Completely miraculous. Doing itself, coming from nowhere, doing the entire universe, just right here. Just you here, like always. You don't need to be special with it. You can't make it go away. It doesn't get improved when you are calm. It doesn't get damaged when you're agitated. You can't affect it. You can't change what this is. It's completely invulnerable. Completely independent. Always right here. Where you are, right here. Completely obvious, completely unthinkable. What is it? What is this? What is this presence? Feel this presence. What is it you're feeling? How can you feel it? You can't not feel it. You are it. You are this presence. Just like always, you are here. Here you are. What is it that's here? What is it that you're feeling? What is it? Whatever happens doesn't change it. It always looks different. Sometimes you see one thing, sometimes you see another thing. Sometimes you hear one sound, sometimes you hear another sound. Sometimes you think some thoughts, sometimes you think other thoughts. Sometimes you feel one thing. But it's always you here, isn't it? Always you here. What is it that's here? What is it that's always here? All this is known. This presence is known. How is that? All this is seen, all this is heard, all this is felt. How is that? What is this that's here? You are here. Just like always, nothing but you here. Don't meditate, don't let yourself trance out. Just feel this experience that's present. Just feel this normalcy. Here you are. You don't need to be special with regard to it. You don't need to be calm or seated in some kind of a funny posture. You can open your eyes, look around, you can move, just like always. And here you are. You never go away. It never changes. But what is it? What is this? What is it that looks like all this? What is it that sounds like all this? What is it that feels like all this? What is it? Just feel it. It's so amazing, so beautiful. It's like a symphony. All this information, all these qualities, just dancing and vibrating in experience. Right here. Just feel what's here. Feel what is present. It doesn't have sections, does it? It doesn't have parts. It doesn't have walls. It doesn't have edges. It doesn't have boundaries. It's just here. And it's everything. Isn't it? It's you here. And it's real. It's actual. Just like always. This that's right here, this that you're feeling, this that you always are feeling, this that you're never doing anything else but feeling, is what all the fuss is about. This is what spirituality is about. This is the yoga of radiant presence. This actual presence here. It is present, actually. It is radiant. It presents as infinite qualities, unstoppably, dynamically. Endless patterns, endless infinite patterns of light, endless infinite patterns of sound, endless infinite patterns of thought, endless infinite patterns of all kinds of experiential qualities, experiential vibrations that we don't have names for. Non-stop, coming from nowhere, going to nowhere, just shining here in this presence that is you. That is reality, that is normalcy. And this is what all the fuss is about. Ordinarily, as people, we're very concerned about the details of our life, the stories, what's happening, who's doing what's going on tomorrow, what am I getting, what am I avoiding, what am I trying to do, what are other people trying to do, what do I think, what do other people think, what do I feel, what do other people feel, all this stuff. And how often do we just notice what's present here, what's actually present? What is all of that, actually, that we tell such stories about? What is it that's here? It's just the field of your experience, isn't it? Is there ever anything here but the field of your experience? Have you ever seen anything? Have you ever experienced anything other than the field of your experience? And what is it? What is the field of your experience? It's very, very strange. We take it completely for granted because it's so normal, so ordinary. But if you take the trouble, take the time to look at it itself, at experience itself, it's very, very, very strange. It's amazing. It's unimaginable, undescribable. And yet it's what you really are, it's what's really happening here. This infinite bubble of transcendental presence. It presents us all of these infinite qualities. That's all there is, right? It's all you can ever find, and that's just you. But it's actual, right? It's real. It's right here. It's available. It's present. You can explore it. You can check it out. You can study it. It proves it. It shows what it is. It's not hidden, right? The presence of what is here is not hidden at all. It's completely revealed. It's completely open and exposed. And you can explore it and check it out as much as you want, and you'll see quite clearly what it is. You won't ever be able to say what it is. But you can certainly see it in all of its astounding aspects.
Peter, can you speak to more It's All You?
Sure. I mean, there's this field of presence, right, that you may call your experience, and everything is in it, right? Everything that you've ever seen or experienced, of course, is in it. And you can't find anything outside of it. How could you leave your experience? It can't happen. And yet, you are your experience. Because you are this field that everything appears in. When you go to sleep, everything, their body disappears, the world disappears, but the field of experience doesn't disappear, which is you. You don't disappear. Then you start dreaming, and there's a new body and a new world and new situations, but the field of experience is right there. You haven't gone anywhere. Then the dream goes away, and there's no more dream body, no more dream world, but the field of experience is still there. You haven't gone anywhere. Then you wake up, and all of a sudden there's a body and a world and situations and circumstances appearing in the field of experience, which is just exactly the same as it was when you were asleep, when you're dreaming. And you can't find any you as a partial thing other than the field of experience. Right? The field of experience is sentient. The field of experience experiences itself. It experiences what all the qualities that seem to show up within it, right? It's just what's actual. This bubble of your experience. That's you. The normal human condition seems to be to relate to one's experience in terms of all the various things and conditions that one takes to be the actual components and objects that constitute your day-to-day experience. We're all very familiar with this. We relate to the environment, we relate to things around us, we relate to our bodies, we relate to apparently other people's bodies and presences and the objects, and so, all the stuff that we have words for. And the normal human mode is to generally just take all that for granted completely as being just exactly what we're used to thinking it's being, without question, being actually there in a very simple way. The physicists can get all highfalutin about all the subtle, weird ways it is, but, most normal people don't bother with that. Quarks, schmarks, who cares about that stuff, Chair is a chair, floor is a floor, people are people, body is a body. And this is all very matter of fact to the normal human way of thinking of things. The problem with this is there's a very fundamental fact which is omitted, which is generally skipped over in what is happening here. And that is the fact of experiencing. All of the things we think of as existing appear in your experience, right? Or that is how you know they're there. You know this room is here, you know these people are here, you know I'm here talking and all that, because all of this is appearing in your experience right here, right now. And it's very easy to go to the things. It's very easy. Oh yeah, there's a room here, it's full of gaudy pictures, there's a lot of people here, there's a guy here talking, blah, 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 all this stuff. You can make a big laundry list of all the things. You could catalog everything in your experience. But most people would leave experiencing off that list. And experiencing is the one undeniable, fundamental fact that actually is here. All of the supposed objects and conditions and events that seem to happen in experience are assumptions. They look that way. It looks as if there's a room here. It looks as if there are people here. It looks as if there's a body. It looks as if there's, so on and so forth, all the stuff. All that stuff is showing up, but the fact that it's showing up is really, really interesting. How is it showing up? What is experiencing? What is experience itself? Experience is the actual event that's here. All the sub-events that seem to be happening in experience, all the stuff and the people and the action and the stuff you could narrate and all that, so on and so forth, is only assumptions about apparent apparitions that seem to be appearing in your experiential field in real time. So the experiential field is very interesting. What's that? Most people don't pay a whole lot of attention to that. Most people aren't very interested in that. Most people just sort of assume, well, consciousness is kind of a byproduct of the brain or something, and just write it off as that. That's very, very simple, and you don't worry about it any more than you worry about quarks. Let the physicists worry about it. But this it turns out is actually a very, very big mistake if you have any interest in finding out what's actually going on here, what you actually are. And it turns out it's rather important to find out what you actually are, what's going on here, because the implications of what this actually is are drastically different than the implications that follow from the normal consensus human reality view. So what is this experiencing? Experiencing is right here. It's completely obvious, completely palpable, right? it's quite obvious that you are experiencing, right? I mean, if you take a moment to look, and well, sure enough, seems to be turned on. In fact, I can't find the off switch anywhere. The experiencer, someone left the experiencer running again. So this experience is very interesting. Experiencing is very interesting. It always happens right here, right? It always happens right now, and it always includes you, right? Whether it includes your body or not. If you go in deep sleep, it doesn't include your body, but it's you still there, right? I mean, maybe in a way that doesn't look in a way you're familiar or used to thinking of yourself as being, but you haven't gone anywhere. And then you start dreaming, and you're still there. You may look different. You may not have a body. I mean, God knows what's going to happen. You can look like anything, right? But you're there. The dream ends. You're still there. You wake up in this apparent world, and you're still here. So it's always here. It's always now. It's always you. And it always looks like something. You know, I mean, even if what it looks like is very amorphous, like in the condition of deep sleep, say, it's not nothing. It doesn't like just become a complete zero, does it? There's all sorts of subtle phenomena and vibe. I mean, God knows what, right? We don't have words for it in the waking language to try and address that level of apparition. But nonetheless, there's something going on in terms of apparition. There's always appearance going on, always appearance. It always looks like something. And it always looks like something right here, right now, and you are here, right? Always. I mean, that's the constant. That is what experiencing is. So it can be very interesting to feel your way into experiencing. Experiencing is actually very accessible. Come on in, there's plenty of extra chairs. If you just feel free to pull one out and throw it around. Join the bash. Drinks will be served shortly. At $5 a pop. Really good chai though. So experiencing is actually quite accessible. It's right here. You can actually investigate it. People don't usually bother to, because usually we're so caught up with the drama of our lives, all the events of what am I going to do, and what did I do, and what's happening, and what's it going to lead to, and oh no, and oh yeah, and all this stuff, right? You know, the soap opera. It's very much like the TV. You know, most people, if you watch TV, you're watching the show. How many people just watch the TV? You don't notice that. Well, the show's appearing, but it's only appearing because the TV's running. So all you're really doing is watching the TV with all of this stuff showing up in it. But how many people bother to... the TV's not very interesting, right? I mean, it's like, well, yeah, it's a TV, but the show's on. I want to see the show, because that's where the juice is. That's where the excitement is. And, of course, we're all very familiar with this. This is the normal human mode of getting caught up in the soap opera, getting caught up in all the drama of what seems to be going on, who's doing what and when and what's going to happen, and, you know, oh boy, isn't it fun, or horrible, or whatever. But experiencing is actually quite interesting. It's not, you know, if you take the trouble to look at experiencing itself, it's not just nothing. It's not just, you know, a boring zero like the TV might be if you imagine what the TV just sitting there, you know. I mean, I'm going to spend an hour sitting there looking at a TV. What's up? Tell me.
Are you broadcasting? Nobody's getting anything.
Well,
that's what they said. It keeps saying starting. It says wait, again. Starting soon. Yeah, start again. Start streaming. Push play.
Yeah, I did it.
Sync to preview player, see? So you can see it at the same time. Don't you want to hit that? Oh, what the hell do I know? Anybody here a nerd? Everybody goes,
not
okay.
I don't know if I'm nerdy enough, though.
Well, this is rather convoluted. We're trying to broadcast over YouTube. I use this as the... Oh, no, it's showing a little no. It's getting... I have no signal.
Bandwidth?
Yeah, no bandwidth, so let me try again.
Do
Let me
you
see what
have a
happens.
hotspot, or what are you using?
My hotspot's on. I had bandwidth before.
There's no Wi-Fi in here?
No, the Wi-Fi sucks. I'm going through a hotspot in my sorry for the brief technical. So this process of looking at experiencing rather than the content of experience, like the normal human modes are, is what has been called yoga in India and various other places. And doing so is the entry into a profound adventure of discovery. Because, as I said, what this actually is, what's actually happening here, and the way in which it's actually happening, and the implications of what this is and the way in which it is that, are really surprising, really amazing, really cool, in ways that are utterly beyond normal human ideas of what's possible or what's going on here. And of course, people, yogis who have succeeded in various degrees in this process of investigation, just they get enlightenment, you discover all these amazing transcendental facts, and you discover your God and this and that, and all the famous hyperbole that all these religious texts are full of. And it's all actually literally true, amazingly enough. All this astounding spiritual, better than the best is actually what's going on here. So that's a pretty nice carrot on a string. That's a pretty nice motivating factor, if you get a hint of that, to look into this, because there is some serious bang to the buck of taking the trouble to check this stuff out. So how do you do it? What do you do? How do you check? Who's experiencing? How do I look at experiencing? Well, to begin with, just that understanding that there's something going on here that I'm not used to looking at. The experiencing itself is a thing, is an action, is an event, is a presence that is not hidden. It's completely available. It's completely discoverable. And just that mindset primes the pump for beginning to feel your way into this. It's got a serious learning curve, because the ways and modes of being with experiencing are drastically different than most, again, normal human modes of how we think of as being with things, or how we think of as checking things out. But nonetheless, it's doable, because it shows you how to do it. Just when you begin to flirt with this stuff, when you begin to poke at it, when you begin to just look into this, you begin to sort of have discoveries. You begin to intuit, there's something here. Wow, there's something here. It's really amazing. It's really different. It's weird. It's incredibly subtle. It's incredibly, slippery, but it's not nothing. And just that, you're at that point, you're already off and running. You're already doing the yoga. You're already engaged in this investigation. And it develops itself, it leads itself, it shows itself to itself. In fact, all of human experience has always been nothing but this. It's showing itself to itself. But it typically, in normal modes, it does it in very inefficient ways. This deliberate yoga kicks that into overdrive, and it's the most efficient way for it to investigate itself very directly, without getting sidetracked by all of this drama and soap opera that we humans usually get so heated up about. All this is really very simple. The crux of the matter is that people in general are used to paying attention to the content, the apparent content of experience, rather than to experience itself. And the content of experience is misleading at best, and is also, the content of experience is also essentially unimportant. The important aspect of experience is experience itself, what it is, what it's made of, that it is happening. That is your true identity is what is experience itself, not what seems to be appearing in experience, not your history, not your life, not your body, not all of these various aspects, but the very fact of experiencing is what this really is, what you really are. Very much like at night, when you're dreaming a dream, what seems to be happening in a dream is essentially irrelevant. As soon as the dream's over, it's going to be gone forever, and essentially doesn't mean much. Even when it's happening, you can't really be sure exactly what's happening. But the dreaming, the presence of experience, which is there when the dream is happening, is of course of vital importance, and that's what's really happening. That's what you really are, irrespective of what seems to be happening in experience. So basically, the point of all this, the essence of all this, is to learn to notice experience itself rather than the content of experience. And of course, there's very little reinforcement for this. All of our experience, social experience with other people, and semantic experience with books and language and all that, is all completely and intensely oriented towards the apparent content of experience. We're very concerned with our bodies and our history and what other people's bodies and histories are doing, and virtually zero attention is directed towards the fact of experiencing itself. It's just taken for granted. It's just a given that, well, of course experience is happening, but what's happening? And in fact, it's all asked backwards, because that experiencing is happening is the important fact, is in fact the only fact, because the so-called content of experience is essentially nothing, because it's an absolute instability and an absolute unresolvability. And so the essence of this yoga, the essence of what I recommend people explore, is exactly this: the presence of experience itself. That experience is the important fact, and noticing this, feeling this fact, feeling the actuality of this fact, is extremely powerful. But it's powerful in a way that does not particularly show up in terms of content. So again, if you're trying to figure out what you're doing or how well you're doing or what's going on with all this crazy spiritual stuff, in terms of your content, in terms of your personality or your relationships with other people, or your success or your failure or your health or your sickness or all these kinds of things, you're completely missing the point, because it has absolutely nothing to do with any of that stuff. That stuff is essentially completely irrelevant. Whereas simply noticing and learning to experience and essentially shift the identity to the true identity, which is the fact of experiencing, is profoundly powerful. One of the most powerful observations to make that reveals very directly what is actually going on here is the fact that experiential qualities, by their very nature, are unresolvable, indefinable, or you could say infinite. Now, I've always struggled with a clear way to put this, and I've never arrived at it. But on Monday, yesterday, in the course of a teleconference, I happened onto a way of putting it that I think makes it much. It's not precise, but I think it makes it much, much clearer. So let's take an example. So it's example time. So suppose you're looking at a painting, and for the sake of extremity and absurdity, let's say the painting appears to be a painting of something horrific, like, let's say, Nazi soldiers machine gunning women and children, or something like that. Just suppose it's a painting like that. It's some twisted person or some person who's making a point painted this horrific painting that looks like, these these soldiers with these looks of hate on their face, machine gunning these helpless women and children, okay? And so there's this painting sitting there. Now suppose you look more closely at the painting, and you notice that the painting's actually pointillist. So when you look very, very closely, you notice that there's actually no Nazi soldiers, no women, no babies, there's a bunch of little dots. And you look more closely at the dots, and you notice they're all happy faces. So what's a painting is a painting of happy faces, happy face dots. But then if you see it in a certain context, it looks like something else. So, and it's not that it is happy faces, or it is soldiers machine gunning helpless people. It's neither. It's a condition of ambiguity that can be seen as the one and can be seen as the other. Suppose you look more closely at one of the dots, you look more closely at one of the happy faces, and it is actually made up of a bunch of other little dots. And suppose those dots are something entirely different, like a bust of George Washington or something, God knows what. And so, and you look at all the other happy faces, they're all the same thing. So it's actually, the painting, there's actually no happy faces there. There's actually no soldiers and women and children. They're all just busts of George Washington. But suppose you look more closely at the bust of George Washington, and suppose they're all made up of dots, and each one of those dots is made up of something else, say, a longhand depiction of of some political manifesto or something, and every single dot is made up of this. And so when you look closely, the entire painting consists of nothing but minute renditions of this political manifesto. And there's no happy faces, there's no bust of George Washington, there's no soldiers shooting people. So you see where this is going? And suppose you back up. You've been looking at this painting of the soldiers shooting women, and you discover all this incredible detail in it, which it consists of, and it's actually entirely other than what it seems to be on that level of observation. Suppose you back up away from the painting, and you notice there's other paintings on the wall, and you notice that those paintings actually form dots that are forming another image. Any image, doesn't matter what it is. We can be absurd again and specify something. You see where this is going?
Chef Boyardee.
Yeah, Chef Boyardee.
Yeah.
A Campbell soup can. Okay, it's a Campbell soup can. And so it can seem to be a Campbell soup can, but it isn't. It can seem to be soldiers machine gunning women and children, but it isn't. It can seem to be happy faces, but it isn't. It can seem to be, I forgot what I said, but it isn't, and so on and so forth. And the point is, this never ends. So there is nothing that it is, because any way of anything that it seems to be is just a way of seeing it. And if you look closely, you'll discover that it's actually something entirely other than that, completely. Now, this example is not accurate perfectly mainly because it uses scale. It uses size. You have to look closer. You have to look smaller, and you have to look larger. And the way experience works this way, experience does work like that. I mean, we all know this. You look at your hand, and it's a hand. You look closer, and it's like cells. You look closer, and it's molecules. You look closer, and it's atoms. Blah blah blah. Where'd the hand go? Well, there's no hand. It's just atoms or molecules or whatever it is. Whatever scale of observation you're looking at it on appears to be. But it's not just that, it's also all the other layers of observation, because there's no hierarchy. It's not like it's really atoms and everything else is untrue, because the atoms, if you look closely, aren't really there either. They're just quarks or whatever. And no doubt when we can look at quarks better, there's not going to be a quarks there. There's going to be whatever the quarks are made of, and so on and so forth. So it obviously applies in terms of scale, size, dimension. But experience is weirder than that. Experience also, not just from size of smallness and largeness, zooming in and zooming out, but also just from what something seems to be, it can simultaneously have flavors or seemings that are inconsistent with each other, just in experience. but the analogy of this I think really communicates this subtle idea more directly than any example that I've come up with previously. So the point being that what spiritual bondage consists of, the sole problem that can exist here, what it consists of is thinking you know what's going on. Now, and the basis for that is experience is highly patterned. It's infinitely patterned, obviously. I mean, there's all these shapes and colors and so on and so forth in the visual field and everything else in their corresponding aspects of experience. And on the basis of all of this patterning, the intelligence draws inferences. Well, there's these shapes, and so maybe these shapes correspond to objects. There's these sounds, so maybe they correspond to words. And so based on these inferences extrapolated from all this intense patterning that shows up in experience, the intelligence erects a hypothesis. Okay, maybe I am an individual, maybe I'm an entity, maybe I'm existing in an objective space-time world, maybe there's other entities in this world, maybe there's other objects in this world, maybe I'm interacting with them, maybe there's cause and effect, maybe there's dependency, maybe there's potential threats, dangers, maybe there's things to worry about, things to hope for. And all of a sudden you have all, the normal human perspective, the normal human frame of reference that, most people live in. And all of which is fine as a hypothesis, but the problem is, what happens typically is people forget that it's a hypothesis. They think that it really is true, it really is like that. It may be like that, but it's just a theory erected on the basis of all this patterning. We erect the same theory when we're dreaming. When we're dreaming, there's all this pattern, and we assume that there's people there and things, and we're doing things and acting and running around and doing all this stuff, right? But of course, when we wake up, we realize, there was nothing there, so I was wrong. The same thing happens, or would happen, when we go to sleep. All this stuff, all these patterns disappear, and if we had enough self-awareness, we would go, oh, I was wrong. But we don't have the self-awareness because, of course, when you sleep, your analytical consciousness is shut down. So there's no processing there to reflect, to draw the inference of, well, wait a minute, where did all that stuff go? Now, the point isn't whether things are or aren't a certain way. The point is that the consciousness interprets the patterns of its experience in such a way and gets so caught up in the urgency of relating to those patterns, i.e. relating to oneself, one's life, one's history, one's position in the world, the urgencies of what one has to do to defend that and protect it and take care of business and so on and so forth. One gets so caught up in that fills the awareness and basically awareness of the basic situation, which is the astounding fact of experience, the astounding fact of the actual apparition of all of these qualities that show up as patterns, the actual apparition of this astounding faculty of perception, of knowing, that spontaneously and effortlessly and transparently and completely assimilates all of that in real time, is completely ignored, is taken for granted, it's bypassed entirely through the urgency of the absorption with the soap opera, with the problems, with my problems, as opposed to, well, wait a minute, but what's this? What is this that's here? And it turns out that what this is that is here has never gone away, of course. Here it is. And what it is astounding, is inconceivable, is essentially miraculous and transcendental in its very nature. And the perceiving faculty is likewise astounding and miraculous and transcendental in its very nature, and there's nothing else present. So, if there's a you, it is this miraculous perceiving faculty, it is this miraculous apparition, this ongoing dream. And seeing that fact as it is casts one's sense of oneself, casts one's sense of what is going on here in a drastically different light, with drastically different implications than the normal implications that arise from the usual horror show being an individual human in this shitty world we live in. And to go back to the point I started with of unresolvability, that you can't really tell when anything is. Is it soldiers shooting women? Is it happy faces? Is it busts of George Washington? Well, it can be seen as any of those if you look at it from a certain perspective, but it's not finally any of those. And there's no final, because the closer you look, the more you look in, you find something completely different and contradictory that turns out to be everything, and you look out, you find something equally different and contradictory that also turns out to be everything, turns out to be comprehensive. So it's all equally true, but it's all mutually exclusive, and none of it fits together. It doesn't resolve, it doesn't come together into coherence. And this is the nature of patterns. All of these patterns, this infinite patterning that your experience consists of, is actual, but it is unresolvable. You can't say what any pattern is, because it reveals infinite different aspects depending upon how it is seen. And since the problem, which is erecting all these hypotheses of interpretation and building a world that one assumes is a certain way, is based upon interpreting these patterns as actually consisting of being a certain thing, when you see conclusively that in actuality the patterns cannot be clearly interpreted as being any particular way, because they are equally other ways, drastically other ways, in the same pattern. And when you see this very directly, then that completely pulls the plug on this whole mechanism, on this whole obsession and absorption in all of this interpreting. Interpretations are just hypotheses. And one sees this directly, one discovers freedom, because at that point you're free of your life, you're free of your body, you're free of history, you're free of space and time, because all of these are just theories. And the theories are erected on this miraculous presence that is always present exactly as it is, completely unexplainably. Why is there experience? What's doing the experience? The only spiritual problem, the only spiritual challenge, is to notice what is actually occurring, to notice what actuality is, to notice what this actual event consists of. And the problem being, of course, that it's easy to not notice that. It's easy to have erroneous understandings and ideas about it, which lead to all sorts of mistaken and confused implications that can bog one down and get one caught up in all sorts of irrelevancies. Actuality is absolutely complete in the instant. In the instant that your experience appears, which of course happens with absolutely zero time lag, with absolutely zero time gap. There's no delay between experience appearing and it being perceived, as if that was two different things. The appearance of the experience in the present moment is the total event. There is nothing else. There is nothing else happening than the appearance of your experience in real time, which means instantly, instantaneously. And it has no duration. It's just this instantaneous flash which presents as all this, everything, bang, and it's completely done entirely complete in that apparition. All event, all functionality, all occurrence is nothing other than this continual instantaneous flash of presence. Naturally, it's completely impossible to define it, to consciously assimilate it, to say what it is, to label it accurately, to have an accurate narration about it, to have an interpretation that is comprehensive. But fortunately, of course, this is completely unnecessary, because in the instant of its presence, in the instant of the presence of experience, which of course is always instantaneous, it's always exactly now, everything is done. Everything's taken care of. It's all happening. It's all being done. It's being done inherently. It's being done spontaneously by what it is, accomplishing what it is, and that's it. And all human narration and drama and getting caught up in things is after the fact and is superfluous and has absolutely nothing to do, essentially, with the actual event. So all the stuff we get torqued up about, all the stuff we worry about and obsess about is absolute fantasy, it's absolute delusion. Now, functionally, from the spiritual point of view, from the point of view of a yogi, yoga is participating with your experience in the way that you actually are, which is to notice the actual event of this instantaneous flash of presence. And its nature. Its nature is well, let's say from a yogic point of view, the most important point of its nature is it is a hyper-intelligent assimilation. Instantly, in the moment of experience, everything appears, and this appearance is not an inert thing. It's not just a mechanical event that's somehow out there, lifeless. Everything appears and it's instantaneously assimilated with an inconceivably functional intelligence, which you happen to be, which your consciousness actually is. In an instant, you walk into a place you've never been, you open your eyes. In that instant, your inconceivably hyper-functional intelligence perceives every single flash of light and color that is there. You can't designate it, you can't name it right away. Maybe you have to sort of sit back and think about what it is, but bang! It's all there. This is not just mechanical, this is not just dead, this is not just an inert, objective fact. It is an exercise of inconceivable intelligent functionality that consciousness inherently consists of, that you inherently consist of. You are this consciousness, you are this hyper-intelligence that effortlessly assimilates your experience in real time. No gap. There's no processing time. It's not like this inherent intelligence needs to sit back and think, well, I think I'm seeing green over there. I think maybe I'm seeing sort of a white over there. It's not like that, is it? Just bang, it appears. It is what it is. There may be a gap before you can name it. There may be a gap before you can start spouting stories about it, narrations and interpretations. But the apparition is completely instant. So this inherent intelligence of the consciousness that you are is continually leaning into, instantaneously engaged with the full field of apparition of all experiential energy phenomena that appear as your experience, continually, in the instant, right? Effortlessly, inherently, spontaneously. And discovering this is what defines a yogi, discovering that you are this intelligence. It's not an intelligence that sits back and thinks. It's not an intelligence that uses words. It's not an intelligence that analyzes or that is rational. It is intelligence that is just here, now, always, effortlessly. You can't turn it off. You can't stop it. And you are this, and noticing that you are this and coming to sort of appreciate this fact, and I guess you could say conceptually come into synchronization with this actuality, makes you a yogi, makes you engage with reality as it actually is. And the implications of this condition, the implications of this functioning, are wildly different than the implications of being a person with a persona and a role in life and success and failure and all the stuff that spins out of this endless analysis and drama that we're all so familiar with. Sort of normal human functioning. How was your day today? What did you do? Oh gosh, this and that and the other. No. This, right now, this is your day. And you can't say anything about it. As soon as you start talking about it, you're just spinning bullshit. You're just telling stories that are incredible partializations, You're not including that particular shade of pink that appeared in that instantaneous flash of your experience. How can you include everything in your experience in a narration? How could you verbalize every color that you perceive right now? How could that happen? But you don't need to, because in the perceiving of it, in its apparition, it's done, it's finished, it's done everything it needs to do. The entire functioning of reality occurs in its appearance. There's nothing missing, there's nothing left over, there's nothing that needs to be done. There's no loose ends that need to be tied up, no T's that need to be crossed or I's that need to be dotted. So, in simply being in the presence of experience, which is the totality of reality, everything is completely done, everything is sufficient, everything is finished. The present, the entire universe is finished in the apparition of the present moment. And this is continually and ongoingly the case. So, and still, we're human beings, so we think and we function and we have emotions and we get involved in situations and extricate ourselves from. But that's just irrelevant. That's just, fine points that comes with this incredibly precise, incredibly sharp and actual panorama of energies that constitutes the actuality of your experience. Ooh, look at donut. Gets better and better. So all of the secrecy and the incredible, complications around spirituality are mostly superfluities about this one fact of coming to notice the actuality of real-time presence, of real-time experience. And of course, saying real-time presence or real-time experience is redundant because there's no non-real-time presence or no non-real-time experience. It's all now. This is the entire shooting match is now. Always, of course, self-evident. And that's what all the fuss is about. That's the entirety. I mean, you could take, 3,000 years of Tibetan Buddhists and 10,000 tantras dictated by transcendental Sambhogakaya Buddhas from the, for the last thousands of years, and the seven heavens and this and that and the other. And all it's really about is this simple fact. Nothing else, nothing more, nothing less. So, we're done here. You guys had fun. It's been lovely to see you.
Well, we haven't finished the chai.
No, there's more chai.
Or the article.
So I've, in keeping with the august traditions of spiritual obfuscation, I've coined this name, Yoga of Radiant Presence, for this very simple, self-evident engagement of noticing what's actually going on here. which is arbitrary, as all names are, and yet is meaningful to a certain extent, in the sense that this event is certainly present. It is presence. You can't say exactly what that is, but nonetheless, this is it, if anything is. And it is radiant in the sense that it unendingly presents with this incredible, inconceivable plethora and spectrum of detail and information and experiential qualitativeness, all these colors and sounds and thoughts and vibes and flavors and qualities that are just, again, instantly self-evident in real time, of course, ongoingly. So it's always present. It always is present as this sea of implication, this sea of apparent information. It never resolves to anything. It never collapses into stability or coherence. You can never sort it out or figure it out. It's completely, dizzying in its astounding implication and quantity. But it doesn't need to be resolved because, again, its apparition is the entirety of its functioning, of its process, of its nature. All it needs to do is show up, and it's Miller time. It's done. and of course, that happens. That happens always, every instant, unfailingly, unceasingly, unstoppably. You can't make it not happen. There's no off switch. I mean, you can be stone drunk and sick with the flu and dying of cancer, and still the present moment is right here, bang, doing its whole thing. It's not about individual functionality. It's not about what you're doing or not doing, how healthy or sick you are, how clear or unclear you are. All of that is just window dressing. All of that is just more human drama. It's just that instantaneous presence of experience itself that's the whole shooting match, the entire shooting match. And it, of course, completely transcends analysis. It completely transcends parsing it or sorting it out or making sense of it or saying what it is or saying what it isn't or anything else, because it's, by its very nature, you can't do it. Try and say what's going on. Try and say what the present moment is. Try and say what's happening. Try and say how it's happening. Try and say where it's going. Try and say what it's doing. Try and say what anything is. I mean, humans have been doing this since the beginning of time, since language was discovered. And no one has succeeded yet. They're never gonna. It can't be said. Because this transcends analysis. It transcends description. It's literally infinite in its quantity and its quality. But again, that doesn't matter, because you don't need to make sense of it. You don't need to describe it. You don't need to sort it out, because in its apparition, everything's done. It's okay. Check that off. Reality's taken care of. Just in the apparition. We humans' idea that we have to sort something out or figure something out or make something happen is so pathetically inane, so pathetically absurd, because reality is taken care of just in being. And of course everything comes with, because all of even our human functioning and our thinking and our emotionalizing and our getting twisted up in our silly ideas happens in real time. So it's already a done deal too. So it comes with. I mean, nothing is excluded from this present moment. But most especially, nothing needs to be done about it. It doesn't need to be made sense of. It doesn't need to be analyzed. It doesn't need to be engaged with or not engaged with, because you can't. How can you not engage with the appearance of your experience in the present moment? The fact that it's appearing means this engagement's already happening. And the real you, which is this astounding intelligence, which is intrinsically perceiving this, is already doing that. Which is why it's Miller time. Always. It's always 5 o'clock somewhere, right? Apologies to any 12-step or recovering in the audience. This is not specifically addressing the issue of substance abuse, but that's available for those who are interested. But, of course, joking aside, discovering the incredible comprehensiveness of the inherent engagement, that you are already completely engaged with reality just by the apparition of your experience. Coming to appreciate, coming to notice that this is not sort of the starting point upon which you build, making sense of it or sorting it out or doing something about it. The apparition of it is the entire show. And you are already completely engaged in that show, but it's on a level of inherent intelligence that we as humans don't ordinarily think of as us. We don't ordinarily think of it as intelligence. My intelligence is sort of me sitting back and being clever and thinking about things and, figuring things out and being able to say clever things or do clever things. But that's a very, very small harmonic of the actuality of intelligence. The actuality of intelligence is what is putting all this here, doing the laws of physics, making the sun shine, making my heart beat and my blood pressure be regulated such as it is, and my breakfast be digested. That's being done now, with absolute engagement, with absolute functionality, already completely. And what's doing it? What I am is doing it. This astounding intelligence that I am, that I can't not be. It just happens. It's not a claim to fame or anything. It just happens to be the case that there is this intelligence which is running all of reality, and it happens to be what I am because there's nothing else. So how could I not be it? How could anything not be it? The sun is this intelligence. The earth is this intelligence. The laws of physics are this intelligence. And I am this intelligence. And noticing that fact is yoga. And the ongoing self-evident participation in this fact is yoga. And you're a yogi when you notice this fact and enjoy the ongoing participation in it. This that's right here is what all the fuss is about. That's the end of my time.
Like I say, we can leave.
Bad for the latecomers.
What it is completely obvious. And it only appears confusing, it only appears difficult to understand if you don't let yourself see what's obvious by being distracted by misinterpretations, by being distracted by partiality, partial interpretations. So what is here? Anybody? What's here?
Radiant presence.
What's here?
This.
Yeah, what is that? That's good. It is this. It's probably good to just leave it at that.
Exactly.
Can you leave it at that? Can you leave it at this and then let go of everything else? Or do you try to bring everything else along with it? What this is completely inconceivable, completely indescribable, cannot be addressed or engaged with accurately through concepts. But unfortunately, we often don't recognize that fact and try to engage it as if it could be engaged through concepts and then get lost in our excitement of doing so, onward and onward. If you listen to people, I've been sitting here while I've been drinking chai, trying to wake up, and listening to people talking. Every single thing that anyone can talk about is a fantasy. Have you ever noticed that? As soon as you say something, it's not real. It's not actual. It's just it's a concept that one may be pretending is actual. And it's not that it's not actual completely, but what it is completely and utterly transcends what it's being referred to as. So when someone talks about what they did yesterday, or talks about this or that or the other, and yesterday, what you did, the this, the that, and the other, are not nothing, but they're certainly not what the words we use to describe them seems to paint them as being. And it is because of this distraction with misdefinition that people get so confused. The basic nature of this actuality that is most essential to see directly is its unresolvability. It's nothing, no condition whatsoever ever becomes completely and finally anything. So you can never know exactly what anything is. You can never know exactly what is happening. You can never know exactly where anything comes from. You can never know exactly where anything goes to. You can never know exactly what anything is while it's here. And this indeterminacy is not a failure to see it clearly. On the contrary, this indeterminacy is seeing it clearly. The failure to see it clearly is to suppose that it is resolvable. Suppose you can get a handle on what anything is, which is what happens. This is the basic mechanism of delusion, so-called spiritual delusion, is thinking you can know what anything is. And then you think you know what you are, you think you know what the world is, you think you know what other people are, you think you know what's going on in your life, you think you know what you're doing, you think you know what you have, you think you know what you want, you think you know what you don't want. And in actuality, it's impossible to know any of it. And that proves to be a very powerful fact. That proves to be really useful. It's not not being able to know what anything is not a failure. On the other hand, it's a supreme success, because then you are able to be with what is really here. You're able to be with what you really are, and this unresolvability is a fullness. This unresolvability is a lusciousness. This unresolvability is a completeness. And this pretense of being able to slice and dice reality into parts and pieces that are separate from each other creates an illusion of incompleteness, creates an illusion of non-fullness, creates an illusion of partiality, where none whatsoever exists. Let me give you an example. You go to sleep at night, basically everything disappears, right? The whole waking world just sort of fades away or whatever, right? But does it feel like a loss? Does it feel like you're losing anything? Or does it feel like letting go into a vast fullness and completeness? But yet what is it? It's completely indeterminate. It's completely undefined and undefinable. But it doesn't. What does it feel like? It feels luscious. It feels exquisite. It feels absolutely full, complete, nourishing, and it feels bulletproof. How can you damage that? How can that be hurt? That very same fullness and completeness is present right here, right now. And in fact, nothing other than that is present right here, right now. And noticing that fact is very easy to do, provided you notice that all the subdividing it and classifying it and slicing it up into parts and pieces doesn't actually exist. It's imaginary. When you go to sleep, there's just a fullness, a completeness of indeterminacy and resolvability. Just a complete fullness, right? This lusciousness. And then say maybe you start to dream, and maybe you seem to be in some situation, and you're involved in something, and you're chasing after something, or who knows what, right? Just some dream, some random seeming chain of events that you seem to be involved in, seem to be present. But when the dream's present, what's present? Nothing is actually present. It's a light show. It's an apparition. There's nothing actually there. There's no things there. There's no beings there. There's no situations. There's no problems, and there's no solutions. There's nothing whatsoever has been added to the indeterminate fullness of deep sleep, except a display of patterns. And the patterns are not actually anything, because if you look closely at the patterns, they don't actually resolve into anything. They seem to resolve if you don't look closely. And this is the magic show. This is exactly the turning point between delusion and realization, is seeing that the apparitional patterns of experience don't resolve in their actuality, versus ignoring that fact and pretending you can resolve them, pretending you can know exactly what anything is. In the actuality of unresolvability, there is fullness, there is completeness. I mean, think of a wave in the ocean, like, so you're on the beach watching the waves roll in, right? Where does the wave begin? Where does it end? Where does it start? Where does it come from? Where does it go to? I mean, those ideas are absurd. You can't answer that question. A wave doesn't have a point where it doesn't exist and then it starts. The wave is the whole ocean. The whole ocean is the wave and shows up as the wave. The wave doesn't have a point where it begins, where it ends. The wave is a name for the ocean. It's not even a part of the ocean, because it's not a distinguishable part. It's not a separable part. It's not the wave versus the ocean that has a line, a dotted line where the boundary is, right? The wave is just a name for what the ocean looks like sometimes. But it never becomes, it's still just ocean when it's being a wave. And the wave has no beginning and no end as a wave, because it isn't a wave, it's ocean. And ocean is vast. Ocean is timeless. Ocean is continuous. And exactly the same way, experience is exactly like that. All of these apparitions and patterns that show up in your experience as the shapes, the content of what you seem to be experiencing, do they have a beginning? They're just like waves in the ocean, right? Nothing you see is separate from your experience. Like I see you sitting there, but I can't lift you out of my experience and put you over here and have my experience over here where it's separate. Like I can't do that with the wave and the ocean. I can't say, well, there's the ocean and there's the wave and there's the dividing line. So all patterning in experience is an artifact of experience itself and never becomes separate from experience. Experience shows up as the patterns and has with absolute instability, and has a dance of apparition within experience, never departing from experience. And when a particular pattern, as you may call it, seems to have disappeared, like when a particular wave disappears, nothing has been lost. The ocean is still there. Nothing is gained when a wave appears. Nothing changes when something appears in your experience. Nothing is gained when something appears in your experience, and nothing is lost when it disappears. Because nothing is there but the fullness of experience. The same fullness that you feel when you go to sleep, right? And there's basically virtually no patterning, or let's say very subtle degree of patterning. So this mental mechanism, this imaginary mechanism of being able to define and differentiate patterns as being separate, as being entities, as being individuated, bears a lot of attention, bears a lot of examination, because this is exactly the point at which delusion sets in, the point at which cutting oneself off from the fullness of transcendental being, the actuality of transcendental being, not just some fancy hyperbole. This is where that occurs. The way this all works, though, is seemingly complicated by its subtlety, its astounding subtlety. The degree of intricacy, of specificity that seems to appear in patterns is amazing. It seems to be, it's very convincing in its seeming integrity and its seeming coherence. So, I mean, this is always the paradox. Specificity and indeterminacy. It seems like they would be opposites. Logically, they're opposites. But in actuality, they're not. In actuality, they're one and the same thing. There's an arbitrary, i.e. an infinite degree of specificity in patterning. In other words, if I look at some experience, I'm using the visual field now, but this applies to any and every experience. If you look at a particular pattern, you can study it more closely, and the more closely you study it, the more specificity there is. I can look at you and I see all of these shapes and colors, and I can look closer and see more shapes and more colors and more nuance and so on in the visual field and so on. Right? So there's an virtually infinite degree of specificity. The closer you look, the more you find specificity. You can just kind of zoom in forever. But every bit of that specificity is indeterminate. It's fuzzy. Is not resolvable precisely as being this or that. It cannot be pinned down. So, you're looking at me, I assume, and I look exactly the way I look. The body that you see here is exactly the shape that it happens to be, right? And that is a specific. It's very precisely that. It's exactly the shape it looks, not some other shape. And yet, exactly what shape is it? Exactly what shape is my body? So we're confounded by the fact that it's continually moving. Everything is continually moving. Experiencing continually moves. Even supposing that things were somehow not moving, the experience of them is mobile, and the pattern exists as an experience. So there's an intrinsic dynamism in the experience of an experiential pattern, a pattern of qualities. And every single specific in a pattern, you can't pin it down exactly what it is, because it's infinite. This quality of infinity bears a lot of intention. Indeterminacy is another way of saying infinity, and vice versa. Infinity, as people who don't understand the concept, infinity does not mean big. Infinity does not mean large. Infinity means you cannot get to an end. Without an end, without a boundary, without a point of finality. So, for example, mathematical terms, pi, which is the ratio of a diameter of a circle to its circumference in terms of the distance, is infinite. In other words, it cannot be specified exactly what it is numerically. It is exactly what it is, but it cannot be specified. It's precisely pi, and that precision is an infinity. Okay, but everything is an infinity. The color of this shirt is infinite. Well, first of all, you look at it, and it's in as many colors as you want to see. It's all sorts of shades of green as you see it. Some of them, one point is a little brighter, one point is a little darker, and so every pixel, as you put it, and pixel is arbitrary how big you choose to analyze it, compared to every other picture, is a minutely different shade, maybe minutely, maybe not so minutely different shade of the same color. So what color is the shirt? Well, it's a myriad of colors, and you look closer and you get even more of a myriad. So the closer you look, it doesn't converge down to a single color it is. On the contrary, the closer you look, the more colors you find. So what color is it? Well, you can't answer that question. I mean, you can answer that question if you average it. Oh, it's green, right? But when you want to get down to specifics, exactly what green is, you can't say. You can't find it. And even when you look, you see exactly what it is. It is precisely that, but it never is. But even in that being precisely that, it's an infinity. It's a bottomless world. You can never get to the bottom of it. I mean, this applies. I'm talking about color, shape, the same thing. Virtually any characteristic of experience that we're used to analyzing partakes of exactly the same nature, where it presents experientially with as much specificity as you care to find. There's all kinds of specifics. There's all kinds of shapes. I mean, in visual field, all kinds of shapes, colors, brightnesses, so on and so forth, right? And yet, every one of them, when you look at it, you just find more information and more information and more information, and it never converges down to simplicity. On the contrary, it always opens to greater complexity, forever. And the closer you look, the more you find complexity, and it never coheres, it never comes together, it doesn't converge to a singularity, to a single wholeness. This is a fact. This is a perceivable, palpable, experienceable fact. That experience is exactly what it is, but that exactness cannot be specified. It's exactly because it's exactly infinite. It's actually infinite. It's not a theoretical or an abstract infinity. It's a concrete infinity. I.e., it is exactly what it is, very precisely exactly the way it is. It's not anything other than exactly this, precisely this, and yet that precision is precisely unresolvable. You can't say what it is. You can't find what it is. You can study it from now till infinity, and you will never come to a precise determination of what that exactness is, even as it is that exactness. This is subtle. It's very confusing from the point of view of human thought, because it's illogical, it's irrational. But infinity is irrational. Infinity doesn't make sense. But it's real, it's actual, and not being able to be with infinities cuts, and insisting on being rational and logical cuts one off from reality, because experience is the only reality, and experience is infinite in its very nature. It partakes of unresolvability inherently. And again, this is not a failure or a sloppiness of how we look. We're not looking close enough. Look closer and you'll see what it's not. No. The closer you look, the more precisely you will see that it is unresolvable. It's like a dream. Exactly what did you dream last night? Well, I dreamed I was talking to someone. But again, the more generally you describe it, the more accurate you can be. You try and get specific, and you get to a point where, well, I really can't say, because it was kind of this and kind of that, and and forget about dreams. How about right here? Exactly what are you seeing right now? Well, you're seeing exactly what you're seeing, right? But what is that? What is that? How could you possibly say? There's not enough time to make a list long enough to include everything that you're experiencing in one instant, let alone one continuous flow of unresolvable events. And this is not just by way of analyzing it, by way of listing it, by way of categorizing it and abstracting it, but it itself is that way. It itself, that is its very nature. Now, coming to see this is very liberating, it's very freeing, because it will free you from the entrapment of the implications that there are individual things, that there are individual entities that partake of a certain nature and that you have to sort out and deal with. Yourself included, your life, success or failure, health, living or dying, all those little things that people get so bent out of shape about. They don't actually exist as such. But they cannot be said because they aren't coherent enough to resolve to say what they are. What is life? Well, this is life. Everyone knows what life is. Okay, everyone knows what life is, but what is that? Well, what's death? Well, death is the end of life. Okay. Right. You don't know what life is, so how can you possibly know what death is? How can you know that death is something to worry about or be afraid? Oh, because it's scary, because I don't want life to end. How do you know you don't want life to end if you don't really know what it is? Well, life is me being here, and death, I won't be here. Well, what does you being here really mean? Are you really here? Is here really here? What is being? Well, this is being. Being is right here. It's obvious. This is it's existence. Okay, cool. What is this existence? When you go to sleep, is it still existence? Well, yeah. It doesn't stop. The world disappears. Are you there? Is your life as a human being there when you go to sleep? Is your history there? Is your past there? Is your future there? Well, kind of not really. But it all comes back when you wake up. Right? Does it? Does it exactly come back? Is everything the same? Or is everything completely different every morning? Every morning when you wake up, is it a unique experience you've never had before? In every single detail. But we don't notice. No, it's the same. It's pretty much the same. Almost the same. Almost the same is a euphemism for entirely different. Think about it. What's happening now is almost the same as the last time I was down here doing a talk in this room, and most of you, or virtually all of you, were here, and it was kind of the same, and I was talking about the same thing, and you guys were kind of in the same place, and we were hanging out saying kind of, no! Every single thing you're experiencing right now is entirely and completely different, and you've never experienced it before, even slightly. The sameness can only be asserted, can only be claimed by denying the precision of the difference. The difference is very precise and very actual. By insisting on ignoring precision and going to generalities, you've cut yourself off from actuality. You've cut yourself off from engaging with real presence. And life is presence. Meaning is presence. Intelligence is presence. Functionality is presence. The life force is presence. Health is presence. Everything whatsoever actual is present. And so distancing yourself from that is not doing yourself any favors, because pleasure is presence, enjoyment is presence, fulfillment is presence, lusciousness is presence. If you want to just push that stuff away, where are you going to be? You're going to be in limbo. And that's where one ends up when one goes to abstraction, when one insists on moving into an imaginary delusionary world, where one insists on thinking you know who you are and what you're doing and what's going on, all of which is completely imaginary, none of which is actually the case. You're basically in a limbo. You're a crazy person. You're living as real a life as someone locked in a loony bin who thinks that Napoleon is living. Well, it's a real life, but it's how real is it?
It says you're offline. There's a few people online.
Well, we're offline. That's because we're offline. I'll go back online. We don't make computers like they used to.
Oh, I know.
We're fine right now. Until we aren't.
Can you
So, what?
refresh it?
It's done. We're on now.
Oh, it is. Okay.
So this is, this is really the turning point. This is really the razor's edge between delusion and realization, between life and zombiehood, between sanity and insanity, is noticing the nature of your actual experience. It is real, it is actual, it is here, it is you, it's unresolvable, it's full, it never gains or loses anything, it never is missing anything, it never gains anything, it never gets bigger, it never gets smaller. It's an intrinsic fullness and completeness and lusciousness. And here it is. And whatever it looks like, it is that. And it always looks different than itself. It always looks different. Never repeats. But what it is completely independent of what it looks like. It does not gain anything or lose anything by what it looks like. It's not